we received it later in the day, right?
Ma'am, for the PNP, we received it on October 24, 2022.
Oh, kanina sabi mo Marso na, Abril.
No, ma'am, October 24, 2022.
Oh, okay. Kanina iba kasi eh. All right, yung AFP.
Good afternoon, ma'am. From the AFP,
Okay.
we received the memo from the DND dated 25 October. So,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, of 2022.
So DND, but no concept note?
Request for comments lang po, ma'am, ang ni-request sa amin.
No concept. So both the AFP, the PNP, and the NICA, no, sorry. Both the AFP and the NICA did not receive the concept note, in fact. That's correct? Because the PNP now says that they actually received it. Pero yung AFP, wala? O baka nakakabit dyan, naka-annex? Baka naka-annex lang yan. Nakakabit. So AFP in fact got it. Yung NICA did not get it. Still, Dick, parang wala.
I'm checking my record,
All right.
Madam Chair.
That's fine. Yes, and we recognize Senator Tolentino. You're encouraged to butt in at any point in time. Is this the usual procedure for requests? Of course, this is not usual business at all. But prior to the resolution filed by myself on June 8th, was there any press release on the part of the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C., the DFA, or any other government agency concerning the request of the United States and the course of action that the government plans to take? The Philippine government plans to take. Nag-anunsyo na kayo, nag-press release, o pinag-usapan na ba to? In any public forum at all?
No, Madam Chair, because we were still consulting and trying to assess the implications of this proposal. So nothing was final in that sense because we were still trying to collate all the views. And if I could just mention that after some consultations with the interagency, it was decided to raise it to a higher level in April. And this was when we went to the Anti-Terrorism Council. That was the one in April. And because we felt it should be now considered at a slightly higher level than the technical working level. Then I think the ATC, if I recall correctly, then recommended it be elevated to cabinet level for further consideration. So we tried to follow all the steps by first consulting all the agencies. And in fact, I could give later a list of the representatives, at least at the October meeting. And in fact, the purpose of that meeting was to discuss the concept note of provided by the United States and to give preliminary observations. And then we proceeded to hold a few more interagency meetings on it to collate the observations of the various agencies. And when we reached the point in April, we had enough of these observations. We decided it's time now to raise it to the higher level or the ATC in April, I think.
Thank you. We appreciate your prudence and determination to raise it to as high a level as possible. Because until this moment, the terms of the proposal and request of the United States are still shrouded in mystery as far as the public as well as the Senate is concerned. Are you free to share with us some of the terms of said request, even only in the concept note? And we have here Senator Tolentino, I think, who's
Madam Chair,
also.
are we referring to the same IAC created by virtue of EO 163? Is this the same?
Oh, no. That's the old one of President Duterte.
So we have a new one
No, not yet.
because this was circa 2022.
Yes.
Nabago na ba yan?
Wala pa. That's
So,
from
iba yun,
President
iba yun.
Duterte.
I had mentioned Mr. Senator,
I'm sorry, I'm late.
the ATC, the Anti-Terrorism
Okay.
Council.
Yes,
Please
Senator Tolentino, what we're trying to determine is how the request was made from the United States. And apparently a concept note was provided by Ambassador Romualdez, forwarded to the DFA, reiterated thereafter by the State Department, and thereafter cascaded to a number of agencies. Not all of the agencies thereafter involved, but some of the primary cabinet level ones were already informed. However, in the interest of transparency, are you able to share with us how many Afghan nationals in total the U.S. intends to temporarily house in the Philippines? How many on a per month or a per batch basis would be housed in this country? I think Senator Jinggoy already mentioned our gaping housing gap locally, and the sudden urgency to house aliens and non-nationals suddenly taking primordial concern. Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we have not gone into that kind of detail in our informal consultations with the United States, because they have come back now and again over the past few months to to discuss some of the issues involved. All I can say at this point, and I say that because there's really nothing agreed yet, but it seems that there is the possibility, if we were able to have any kind of arrangement, we would be having perhaps a pilot group, maybe a limited number. Now, we haven't even discussed that number yet. To first, we could first see how that pilot group would work, and then we would decide on how to proceed after that. But we have not gone beyond that issue, other than to say we might have a pilot group. But what I can say are the following, and these appear in the concept note and also after further informal talks with the United States. We understand from the U.S. that all Afghans who will be traveling with valid passports and will have already, before they were to arrive, if they were to arrive here, would already have undergone rigorous security vetting and background checks to verify that they have indeed previously worked for the U.S. government, because these will be Afghans who had worked before with the U.S. government. And we've also been informed that all costs would be shouldered by the United States government. Also, the United States would, with Philippine officials, try and select a suitable site where they could be located while they are being processed or vetted. It would, of course, be up to the Philippines. We also mentioned that to them, that if any arrangement, it would be up to the Philippines to impose mobility restrictions and internal movements within the Philippines. The U.S. also committed to us that in the event there are Afghans who come here for processing, that no one would be left behind in the Philippines. And that includes even those who may be denied an SIV, whom we expect will be removed to another country outside the Philippines as soon as their maximum allowable period of stay expires. And therefore, any agreement we feel on this effect with the U.S. must contain provisions regarding the removal of those denied an SIV. There are also a number of points I could.
Yes, Secretary, we're in receipt of your briefer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. So the numbers have not been discussed, but there have been various reports. Perhaps Ambassador Romualdez, you could help us. There are reports that upwards of 1,000 eligible Afghan nationals per month would be sent, maybe 1,005 to 2,000 per batch, reaching a total of 30 to 50,000 Afghan nationals to arrive in the Philippines under this effort. Is that correct, Ambassador Romualdez?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is what they were telling us, that they would like to see if they can bring in at least 1,000 per batch. However, I just want to point out that it is really completely
Does
up
it
to
mean
us.
per batch, per month? And the second batch will not come in until the first batch of 1,000 has departed and been processed to go to the United States? Or will there be 30 to 50,000 total Afghans in the Philippines at one time?
It's completely up to us on how we want to proceed with this request. We can have it 1,000 each time, and they will be repatriated to the United States once they receive their SIVs, or they will bring in perhaps 1 or 2,000. It depends on the kind of the boarding or lodging that they will provide, which all of these they will be at their expense.
Yes, thank you. I would like to call on Senator Coco Pimentel, who has been raising his hand.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. May I ask, where are these potential Afghan refugees right now?
From
Ambassador
the way,
Romualdez.
yes, from the way I understand it, they are currently located either still in Afghanistan, perhaps some of the family members of this people who worked in the United States with the United States government, but the last conversation I had with the State Department is that some of them are in Pakistan at the moment.
So thank you for that point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Tolentino, please.
Ambassador Valdez, a few questions. You're
Yes.
willing to answer some. Aside from the United States, there are existing similar SIV programs right now. We have one in Canada, the special immigration measure. We have one in Germany, also applicable to the Afghans. The United Kingdom has the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy, or ARAP. Australia has a program known as the Afghan Locally Engaged Employees, or LEEE. Aside from the United States, were there requests coming from the other countries I mentioned a while ago?
Not to us, not that I know of.
But you are aware of the several programs I mentioned a while ago.
Yes, they pointed it out to us that there are programs of other countries similar to what they were requesting.
And if you're familiar with these programs, these are short-term, temporary programs that would entail the processing of Afghans displaced prior to their relocation, for instance, to Australia, United Kingdom, Germany, Canada. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct, Senator.
So ang mangyayari po sa atin, temporary site controlled by the Philippines, as mentioned by Secretary Manalo, perhaps a site with proper security measures, and perhaps a site funded by the United States. And is the United Nations involved, Mr. Ambassador?
I'm not sure. Perhaps Secretary Manalo could. I don't think the United Nations is involved in this.
Madam Chair, the reason why I'm mentioning this is that as we speak, there are 29 to 33 Filipinos still in Kabul right now, working for various NGOs. We have, correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Manalo, we have accepted a similar number of Syrian refugees. And during the past decades, we accepted several East Timor refugees. And if hindi pa ako buhay, during the time of President Quezon, syempre po, libo-libo po yung Russian Jews. So that the question of distance probably is inapplicable right now. And during the time of President Marcos, we have the South Vietnamese being stationed temporarily in Palawan. So, Mr. Ambassador, kung sakali pong pumunta rito yung Afghans, ang kinakatakutan po kasi ng marami, parang nagkaroon ng stereotyping na, suicide bombers ito. Ito po ba mga edukado? Ito po ba mga kababaihan? Ito po ba binubuo ng pamilya na naiwan? Hindi po ito yung mga nakasabit sa eroplano. Ito po yung naiwan doon dahil nagtrabaho sa mga embassies. Tama po ba?
Tama. Hindi all of them lahat sila nagtrabaho for the US government in one way or the other. At saka yung kanilang mga pamilya kaya it's anywhere between 50 to 60,000 that are still being processed for repatriation to the United
And you're
States.
perhaps aware, Mr. Ambassador, that we are a signatory to countless international agreements
Yes.
that would that should allow us to accept these Afghans
Yes.
in our soil. Tama po ba
You-
yun?
That's correct, Senator.
And are you aware of this? I hope my pronunciation is right. I haven't been to France yet, Madam Chair. Refoulement would mean the return of a refugee to or her former state against his will, where he will be more threatened by, in this case, the Taliban. So, pag yung nakarating po sa atin, nagdili-dali tayo, pinabalik, marami ho tayong violation. Tama po ba yun, Ambassador?
Yan, hindi ko sigurado yan. Pero ang alam ko lang, the United States government has assured us that whoever that we will allow to come into the Philippines for processing, they will take care of them completely. In other words, if they are for some reason denied the SIV that the processing will take place, they will be immediately sent to another or a third country.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. One last point, Madam Chair. Secretary Manalo, correct me if I'm wrong. My data was prepared several weeks ago. More than 90,000 Afghans have been resettled across the United States over the past 20 months. More than 11,000 SIVs were issued to Afghans between October 2021 and September 2022, according to official figures. Tama po ba yan?
I cannot confirm, Mr. Senator.
Yes. Kung sakaling yung tama yung binabanggit nyo na 50,000, 1,000, mapapasama tayo rito sa figures na to. Kung dito ipoprocess to. At the rate they're going, 11,000, halos isang taon, 90,000 na relocate. May posibilidad ba ho, Mr. Ambassador, na bumagal dahil nandito, natambak sa atin? Meron ba hong ganong posibilidad? O
Well,
nagustuhan na kayo sa tanong ko?
Hindi, nasa sa atin na yun, Senator, na kung ilan ang gusto natin. Pero ang request nila is anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 per batch. Ipo-process nila, then they will go to the United States. Kung gusto natin less, pwede rin. Ang tinatanong na sa atin is exactly yung kanilang tinatanong o rini-request sa atin, what is it that we will be able to get back to them that we can accept? In other words, not all of these 30,000 or whatever it is they intend to process will come to the Philippines, and then they will be here and they will wait for their processing. It will be by batches.
Definitely,
And
Mr.
it's
Ambassador.
completely up to us.
Mr. Ambassador, narami ho nakikinig ngayon. Definitely, the Philippines will not be the final destination of these refugees.
Yes, that is
Temporary
absolutely.
temporary lang po sila dito. Ang kinakatakutan ng marami ay baka malahukan ng mga terrorist. Kaya na-elevate na sa Anti-Terrorism Council, etc., etc. Naniniwala po kayo, Mr. Ambassador, na ito pong pinag-uusapan natin ay pangamba na may posibilidad na hindi naman dapat mangyari kasi na-vet na po yun bago dalhin dito.
Correct. Yan ang tama, Senator. Kaya nga, lahat ng ating mga security agencies ay tinatanong ng DFA dahil they also will have to give their comments kung anong tingin nila. Pero yan ang sabi sa atin ng mga Amerikano na they will be vetted first, they will be double-checked before they come to the Philippines, and then again through processing.
Madam Chair, if I may be allowed to express my personal sentiment, I don't see anything wrong here. Sa tingin ko po, kung talagang na-vet ito, nagkaroon lang ng konting hype, stereotyping, bordering on discrimination. Na siguro naman, mabubuting tao yung iba. Yung mga FW po natin, nasa iba't ibang bansa, tinatanggap naman po yun. Kasasabi ko lang, merong 33 na Filipinos pa sa Kabul. So siguro kung masasala po ito, wala tayong gastos, nasa secured na lugar, nasa isang isla, I think, Madam Chair, we have abided and complied fully with all our international humanitarian commitments, including the possible erasure of what they term as quote-unquote, human rights records of our country. Malinis na ho tayo dito. We're getting here with clean hands. Tinulungan po natin yung mga tao na wala namang mga
Okay.
kasalanan. Details will be laid down. But yun lang po yung sentiments ko, Madam Chair. But
Yes,
ang mali lang po dito siguro yung proseso shrouded in non-transparency manner, not revealed to the country, not full explained, siguro DFA ang dapat managot yan, pero yung mga Afghans, wala po silang kasalanan. Salamat po, Madam Chair.
Maraming salamat, Senator Tolentino. Ngunit, ang ating tinatanong ngayon, kung bakit ipapadala ng Amerika ang kanilang mga dating empleyado sa ating bansa. Wala naman tayong kinalaman dito. Hindi ba nila tayo binigyan ng dahilan? What reason was given by the U.S. for making the aforementioned request, if any? Ambassador Romualdez, Secretary Manalo, and as mentioned by Senator Tolentino, are they in fact refugees? What is the understanding of the DOJ, the DFA, and the BI of the term refugee? Ambassador Romualdez has explicitly stated these are not refugees. They are former Afghan employees of the U.S. government. I need clarification po. Secretary Manalo, Ambassador Romualdez, please respond and lend us light here. Secretary Teodoro is shaking his head. Would you like to both in, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Honor. Technically, they're not refugees because basically they're not displaced. They're in their homeland right now. They have not applied for political asylum or any other thing. They're not on extraterritorial jurisdiction. My understanding is that their visas for the United States shall be processed within this country because of administrative difficulties of the U.S. government, because of their bureaucracy in conducting any processing, but they are not refugees as of this time. They may become refugees
That is
if
correct.
their visas are denied and they are not
And they're not
repatriated.
allowed to be repatriated.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm in full agreement. I think they are not refugees, as rightly pointed out by Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Is that correct, Ambassador? Was your statement regarding the fact that these are not refugees we are speaking of, and there is no doubt that the Philippines upholds and takes pride in our history of giving succor and refuge to international refugees. Ambassador Romualdez, please. These are not refugees,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Madam Chair. They are not refugees. They are employees or former employees of the U.S. government, and they're asking us if we could help them in processing them, precisely as pointed out by Secretary Teodoro, that it is a matter of administrative in nature.
Thank you. That being the case, I get affirmation as well from DFA Legal that they are not refugees. That is correct? Okay, if that is the status of these individuals, what is the basis, therefore, of the executive branch of government for admitting them into the Philippines under Section 47 of Commonwealth Act 613 on the power of the President to admit aliens for humanitarian reasons, expressly referring only to refugees? Yes, Secretary Manalo, please. What is the basis, since they clearly are not refugees, they cannot be accommodated under Section 47 of the Commonwealth Act?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In fact, the notion as we understood it from the concept note of the United States is there's no intention to leave them here in the Philippines. They're only going to use the Philippines as a temporary site where they're processing for their eventual trip to the United States, provided they pass all the vetting. And the U.S. In our talks has also assured us, in case we agree, that they would ensure that none of the SIV applicants would be left behind, nor have the option to consider remaining in the Philippines to seek refugee status. So this would only be, in effect, a temporary situation. And if I could just.
Given the extraordinary circumstances, and we appreciate the emergency concern, the worry is, what shall be their status while they remain in the Philippines? Will they be non-immigrants or immigrants? What kind of Philippine visa will they be given? Under what treaty will their rights and obligations be governed? The problem is that the special immigrants visa has been promised in 2 weeks. The reality is that we are also aware that they could come as late as 59 days. In the United States, 77,000 continue to wait for their visas for periods longer than 4 years. May we have clarity on their status while they remain in the Philippines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the Afghan nationals who would be coming here are, in fact, all Afghan nationals are listed as Category A. In other words, restricted nationals who are required to apply for a visa in the Philippines. And normally we would give them up to 30 to 59 days.
So sorry, what will they be again? Non-immigrant, immigrant?
Non-immigrant.
So non-immigrant. So klaro yan, non-immigrant.
Category
Okay.
A, yeah.
And under which treaty are we governing the rights and obligations? Non-immigrant sa ilalim ng alin?
Okay, I'll have to consult on that, Madam Chair. Which treaty?
Madam Chair, we had a meeting.
Yes, Secretary.
On Monday
Oo.
with the undersecretaries of the DOJ and Undersecretary Lazaro and Undersecretary Vasquez. Actually, the major problem here really is an immigration problem and a legal problem. And so I think if the DOJ is already prepared, because they still have to come out. We have requested them finally for an opinion on the potential status of these people and the problems in case or the way forward in case their SIVs are denied. To date, Madam Chair, we are still waiting for the opinion. It was only formalized last week that the DFA shall be the lead agency in our conference, person-to-person conference. And we are very sensitive to the issues raised by the chairperson that this not being per se a humanitarian issue, it could turn into a humanitarian issue in case the obligations of the other party are not complied with. Therefore, this was raised to us by the DOJ.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're very pleased, and truly the differences are glaring between refugees, non-immigrants, and immigrants insofar as regulations, restrictions, and their freedom of movement is concerned. So what would be, off the top of our heads, the status if they were non-immigrants? They would be granted freedom of mobility while they are waiting, as they are in the National Convention Center in Arlington, Virginia, as we're well aware. Or as non-immigrants, will they be confined to a single space, apparently in New Clark City? Is that the consideration? What other distinctions do you think are important? I believe that the NBI is deeply concerned about the security permutations in as much as they would impact on our own public safety.
Madam Chair, if I may be
Yes,
permitted
Secretary, please.
to answer, even the housing is still under consideration. We also do not want them to be housed as if they were detainees, which is the furthest thing from the image we want to portray. And keeping them for an extended period of time within a confined environment, particularly with their children involved, will not only complicate their physical liberty, but the end state of their mental health and wellness too. That is why, Madam.
There's also, Secretary, sorry to butt in, but actually, there's also the consideration that they'll be coming back and forth to apply for their special immigrant visa from New Clark City and all the provinces involved going towards the U.S. Embassy in Metro Manila. Is that our understanding?
Madam Chair, insofar
Because that
as
is
the-
what is stated so far in the brief.
No, Madam Chair, as far as the informal discussions between us last week is that all the services from the processing to their medical care shall be done on site.
This is not medical care. I think this has to do with their visa application.
Even then, Madam Chair, the U.S. Embassy has to place extension services.
Parang iba yung
In
sinabi
the
ng
site.
DFA. Ang sabi ng DFA, mag-a-apply pa sila sa consular offices ng US Embassy. Wala dun sa Clark.
Madam-
Pabalik-balik sila. Kaya yung sinasabing confined to a certain space, hindi realidad yun. Yes, Secretary
But I
Manalo.
clarify.
Although NBI is recommending, according to their briefer, I hope I quote you right, na sana magpadala ng visa, special visa officer na lamang dun sa lugar, imbes na ganito. Yes, Secretary Manalo, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, when we referred to the U.S. Embassy, et cetera, here, that is the U.S. proposal. And we still have to react to that. And I think Secretary Teodoro, after we talked, felt that we feel perhaps that this should not be the arrangement. But the U.S. proposal, at least in their concept note in discussions, was that the applicants would visit the U.S. Embassy here in Manila for a visa interview, and then an embassy-identified hospital for medical evaluation for the actual issuance of U.S. visa. That is the U.S. suggestion.
Yes, that's the American
We
suggestion.
are
As,
not necessarily in agreement with that.
I understand. The reason, of course, is that until October of last year, in the National Convention Center of Virginia, where they were actually being processed, they could leave the facility at any time, were not considered prisoners by any means, and could therefore have freedom of mobility. Is that the same thing we're suggesting? And have we consulted New Clark City, Tarlac, for example, Pampanga, Subic, and the rest of the ramparts? Yes, Secretary Teodoro, please.
Madam Chair, we have not proceeded to that extent as far as I know. And if there will be, insofar as the Department of Defense and perhaps even our fellow security sector officials, the least amount of area they can travel from and to would be naturally physically better for us. Now, the optics of this may be different, but the least amount of travel. However, we have not discussed in thorough detail a definite site where this will be. And we definitely have to consult with the officials involved in the areas, just like when we apply for an ECC, for that matter, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm just curious why there's been a change of heart. I mean, in the past, we're aware that following the withdrawal of the United States from Kabul, many Afghans were processed in the United States. Bakit bilang nabago? They used to house the Afghan evacuees in facilities within the U.S., like I said, the National Conference Center in Virginia. And then in September 2022, there appears to have become a new strategy where the Afghans arriving in the U.S. no longer will be temporarily housed in safe haven facilities in the U.S. What is the reason? Maybe Ambassador Romualdez, you can tell us what is the reason for the change in strategy of the United States? Bakit ayaw na nila tanggapin yung mga Afghan doon sa National Convention sa Arlington? Napakarain na nung dumaan doon. Ba't biglang nagbago? At biglang tayo na ang kinakatukan?
Well, actually, they're really, the fact is that there are quite a number of them. And as you said, they have that here in Virginia. Pero the main reason why they're also asking other countries, we're not the only one, by the way. There are other countries. I think Germany is also being asked. They also had a processing center in Qatar, and from what I understand, also in Albania. Is because there's just so many of them that they would like to be able to do it quickly as possible, because they have a timeline, I suppose, and that's the reason why we're being asked as an ally of the United States. we are one of a number of countries that they have requested if they could use it. They use the country for the processing of these Afghan nationals that work with the United States government.
Yes, Ambassador, you say there are just too many Afghans. We're talking about tens of thousands because we have heard that 25,000 were already processed through UAE, 10,000 in Qatar. You now mentioned Germany and Albania. Are there tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions? Is there a projected number to this
But the
enormous migration?
The number that we received was around 50,000 that are still for processing. This
50,000.
includes, yes, this includes government people who work with the U.S. government and their families.
Pero kung 50,000, yun din ang hinihingi sa Pilipinas. You mean to say 100%, yung buong 50,000, lahat babagsak sa Pilipinas?
Hindi naman.
Bakit ba huminto yung UAE at yung Qatar? Ba't sila huminto? Bakit huminto yung US? Dati naman pinoprocess doon, nakatenga pa, 77,400. Bakit tumigil ang US? Bakit sila tumigil? Bakit bigla Pilipinas ang naisip?
Well, hindi naman naisip. Ang pagkaalam namin, they were asking other countries, and the Philippines is one of them because of the fact that we have this relationship with the United States. We're an ally, so they thought the Philippines could be a place where we could allow them to process their special immigrant visas.
The reason I ask, sir, is that UAE and Qatar are obvious processing areas because of their distance. And they're already doing this, 25,000 and 10,000. Why did they stop? Kung 50,000 na lang ang butal, kayang-kaya na nila idagdag doon. Nagkakaintindihan sila. Magkapareho sila sa kinakain, sa gawi, sa iba't ibang paninindigan at paniwala.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit biglang tinigil. Pero ang pagkaalam ko, humingi sila ng tulong sa atin kung kung pwede nila i-process yung kanilang mga government employee, yung nagtrabaho sa kanila dito sa Pilipinas. As one of the many countries that they're asking for this.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not unwilling to help. Like all Filipinos, we have an open arms policy to all refugees throughout the world at any time. However, it appears to me that we are an unlikely candidate simply because napakalayo po natin. Parang inilalayo natin sila lalo, samantalang meron ng existing. Unang-una, kung babagsak rin sila sa US, bakit hindi nga ituloy-tuloy na lamang yung nandyan sa Virginia? Nahinto ba since Washington DC is clearly by Virginia? Have they stopped processing people in the National Convention Center, please?
I don't think so. I think they're still processing a number of them as of now.
I see, because I understand from press releases that with the Operation Allies Refuge, Operation Allies Welcome, and the other enduring welcome efforts of the United States, the Biden administration announced that Afghan nationals in October 1 of 2022 will no longer be able to enter the US under the Humanitarian Parole Authority. So tinigil sa US, samantalang ito empleyado ng US. Bakit tayo ang magiging sangkalan? Yun lang ang tanong ko.
Well, pwede natin itanong sa kanila kung bakit sa atin na. Pero as I said, isa tayo sa mga ibang mga bayan na humingi sila ng tulong kung pwede idaan doon bago nila dalhin sa Amerika.
Would you know if Thailand, our good neighbor and ASEAN partner, which is a treaty ally of the United States, has been requested by the United States to process Afghan employees as well?
I am not sure, Madam Chair.
I have been told that no request was ever made to Thailand. Why only the Philippines?
Well, as I said, they approached us in October, and we said that we will consider it and we're going to study the matter. But we have not asked them why you picked us. The only reason they told us is because they felt that the Philippines was an ally that they could ask this particular favor, perhaps if you want to call it that. And they have brought it up to the highest levels in our government, including the president.
Okay, so if the U.S. is unable or unwilling to temporarily house their Afghan employees in U.S. soil, why don't they go to U.S. territories such as Guam, Puerto Rico, Guantanamo? Secretary Manalo, you're raising your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought I would just say a few words on this issue on the why the U.S. might have approached us. Of course, we can only surmise, but what I gather is aside from being a partner and a treaty ally, I think they also are aware of our long tradition of providing humanitarian assistance. So that's why they have approached us. On the United States is actually these are SIV applicants and not applying for refugees. I mean, they're not refugees as such. And as we understood from the United States, their laws require that this category, SIV applicants, have to be processed in third countries, not in the United States. So perhaps those could be the reasons why, in fact, that's one of the reasons why they approached us on this.
Pero magulo rin sa atin yan, di ba? Kasi under our immigration rules, and the BI is here to confirm, Norman, please, Afghan nationals are Category 1 nationals. They should first obtain Philippine visa before entry in Islamabad. Isn't that correct? So that puts into question their status if they remain in the Philippines as well. So that also puts into question our ability to impose our laws on all those in our territory. And we'll sacrifice all that simply because we'd like to accommodate a favor that could probably be better served elsewhere. Just a question.
That's why we have to be very clear if we were to accede to this, that our laws would be followed. And if they have a stay of 30 to 59 days, for example, in accordance with our Category A, then we would have to apply that strictly, and we would have to make that very clear to the United States that they could not stay longer than they are allowed, according to Philippine law, because of their specific category. And that's the point we would, if we ever get into negotiations with the U.S. formal, we would have to insist on these points.
Yes, Secretary, this is a real problem because of the change in strategy in the United States and the refusal now to extend humanitarian parole authorities. We are not certain they will actually receive their special immigrant visas. And the delay, as we know, has been tremendous and admitted by the Americans themselves. Sadly, unfortunately, the Humanitarian Parole Authority is one that myself and my family utilize, so I'm inordinately familiar with the same. It guarantees no residence, it guarantees no rights or any other abilities under that status, nor any immigrant or other privileges. So it's not something I would wish on anyone. Okay. There's a further question. You said that rigorous security vetting has already been done by the United States government. What about the Philippine government? Are we able to undertake rigorous security vetting and background checks? Will we be able to go over their employment records and all their family details from Islamabad through our very meager embassy deployment out there that covers Kabul at this point?
Madam Chair,
Secretary Teodoro, please.
if the category would be former U.S. government employees, then the job is much easier because they would have been vetted in the first place before they would have been hired. Admittedly, there are problems with their family members, if ever, who were not vetted. And that is one of the issues that we would want to go through. What kind of vetting did they go through in the first place? Which I personally, I wonder if the other agencies, what standard they will apply.
Yes, the NBI has questioned that, so have some papers from the PNP questioning our ability to actually vet the incoming Afghans.
What we are certain, Madam Chair, is once they arrive in country, then we can, of course, take precautions as to what they may do. Because, for example, like even in voice calls or whatnot, we can have them sign certain waivers, like when you answer a call center, this phone call is being recorded for your protection, or even like a company email or a Senate email for that matter. However, insofar as their backgrounds are concerned, there definitely will be some gaps. However, insofar as the NSC position is, depending on the arrangements made for their stay here, the number of those that will be agreed upon, the risk is low.
Yes,
Security risk
certainly.
is
We
low.
appreciate your anxiety and we share the NBI, the PNP, the AFP's concern, as well as the anti-terror group's concern that we simply do not have sufficient information and capability to get background checks on all of them. And even if we confine them to quarters and treat them almost as immobile prisoners, the reality is there are IT and other communications technologies available. The other consideration is NBI has mentioned the presence of sleepers among Afghan applicants as being highly probable, that the presence of SIV applicants could make the Philippines a target for Taliban and its splinter groups, and so on. Is that a reality? We so far do not recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan, although we have had diplomatic relations with the country for a long while now. What exactly do we anticipate? NBI, perhaps, since you are very concerned about the security aspect and submitted an early paper on the same.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think the apprehension we noted is that they may have sympathizers from the southern Philippines, from our Muslim brothers. So that is a possibility, Madam Chair.
Yes, would anyone from NICA and the other security agencies would like to comment that local terrorist groups could exploit the situation and be strengthened or encouraged in some way by the presence of the Afghans here?
From NICA, Madam Chair, we also express the same anxiety because they are given also the opportunity to for this some terrorists to travel, and that is a problem of records checking, and it will pose some security concern later on.
Yes, quite apart from the background of these Afghans, will it be a source of propaganda and extremist narrative in pro-Taliban and Al-Qaeda groups, other sympathizers that we are all fully aware of that exist in our Muslim South?
Certainly, Madam Chair, this could be used as a propaganda. And it could also, since our apprehension is about the sleepers, they could always be activated, and it will have an impact as far as revival of some activities in the South.
Yes, the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos are very concerned about peace in Mindanao. Attorney Guro, you expressed some doubt about this effort.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The same sentiments we raised during the June 7, we are not particularly concerned about the infiltration or the sleepers among these coming Afghanistan, but more of being a target of an attack. As we all know, just recently, this Wednesday, an incident happened in Marawi again concerning the same group who caused the Marawi siege. So apparently, they're regrouping and they're growing in numbers because of the continuous problems in Marawi that up until now most of these affected by the Marawi siege were not yet they have not returned to their homeland or to their homes. So these are the concerns for the National Commission on Muslim Filipinos, because if their mobility will not be limited, and even if their mobility will be limited, these people from the south or these sympathizers of the ISIS-inspired group can easily, travel to Luzon. And that is the concern, actually. We agree with the Security Council that as far as the infiltration of, Taliban inspired from this Afghanistan, that is very slim. But for the security concerns of those within the Philippines already, like the sympathizers of these leftist groups.
Yes, that seems very obvious, right? Um, yes, I think doesn't the fact that the US no longer wants to house these foreigners in safe havens within territorial United States raise concerns for us? They're claiming that they're very low risk security, that highly vetted groups will be the only ones coming, and that the SIV is assured, and yet they don't want them. Doesn't this raise concerns on the background and character of these individuals? Ayaw nga ng empleyado ng employer. Ayaw ng employer kunin yung dating empleyado. Bakit tayo ang kukuha? Tayo hindi nangangamba. Sila ayaw. Ba't ganun? Walang sasagot? Secretary Manalo, no, just playing devil's advocate, and well, it seems logical. Sila yung employer. Ayaw nila dun sa mga empleyado nila. Ayaw nilang kunin. Ba't tayo kukuha? Wala naman tayong kinalaman dyan. Hindi natin kilala. Hindi natin kaano-ano. Naaawa tayo, pero maawa muna tayo sa sarili natin. Yes po.
Yes,
Ambassador Babes, Jinggoy.
Well, actually, Madam Chair, sinabi na nga ni Secretary Manalo, which I confirmed, that itong ang special immigrant visa, kailangan talaga, bago sila makapasok sa Amerika, ipoprocess sa labas. Iba yung refugee status kaysa dito sa special immigrant visa. Kasi the minute they approve that, talagang they can come to the United States, work here, live here, and this is going to be their new home. Yun ang pagkaalam namin sa special immigrant visa.
Yes, tamo pa. Kaya dun sa interagency meeting June 7, pati DOTR, transport, di ba, kasama. Kasama na rin DepEd. Ibig sabihin, 4 years of school. Kasi 4 years average yung application ng SIV. Mag-eskwela pa ba yan? Elementary at high school, di ba? Kasi pinatawag kayo. Sino-sino pa pinatawag? DICT, DOST. Lahat tinawag di ba? So, pang matagalan yan, hindi yan 2 weeks na sinasabi ipoprocess. Senator Jinggoy, nagtaas po kayo ng kamay. Nakamute po, Senator Jinggoy, nakamute ka. Ay, Senator Jinggoy, did you raise your hand? Nakamute ka pa. Ayun. Ayun. Senator Jinggoy.
Yes, Madam Chair, for those Afghan nationals who will be denied the special immigrant visa, may I know what is the plan of the United States, and where will they go if their temporary visas will expire? Who will cover the expenses if they need to leave the Philippines?
Well, silang gagastos ng lahat, and if they are, as they put in that concept paper, they will repatriate them to a third country or bring them back to where they are. But they claim that the percentage of this is practically nil.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, I was just wondering, why did they choose our country? Why not other ASEAN countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, etc., etc.? I was just curious about it.
Well, let's put it this way. Ang tingin nila, we are an ally of the United States. So tinanong nila sa atin kung that we're willing to do this. And it's true, yung sinabi nga ni Senator Tolentino that we've had a history of really accepting this even from before. Alam mo, yung, for instance, yung ginawa ni President Manuel Quezon, hanggang ngayon, dito sa Amerika, yung American Jewish community, lagi nilang sinasabi nila ang Pilipinas ay talagang nakatulong sa kanila. So they're really going out of their way rin whenever they can. Marami nagsasabi sa akin sa Israel, yung ating mga OFWs, iba yung trato sa kanila. They give them special care dahil sa ginawa ni President Quezon. So I assume that, as pointed out, even if they're not refugees, we have a reputation for being able to be open in helping people in distress.
Yes, what about the vetting process, Mr. Ambassador? Who is going to vet them?
Well, the U.S. government will vet them. Actually, they are going to be vetted first before they come to the Philippines. We are going to, as Secretary Manalo said, we're going to issue them a temporary visa to come into the Philippines for about 59 days. So there is a time limit for that visa. And once it's expired, the United States is, I assume, obligated to bring or either process it immediately or they have to leave the country.
Yes. Are we not going to be involved in the vetting process, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, our vetting process is really going to be before we issue the visa. Do natin and all of this information has to be given to us, whatever information that we can get on the people that we're giving these visas.
Ambassador Romualdez, I'm sorry, Jinggoy. What visa? We're giving them a visa before they come to the Philippines, Ambassador
Well,
Romualdez?
I think they're giving, from what the understanding.
Apply sila kay Ambassador sa Islamabad? Dadaan
No.
mo ng Islamabad bago pumunta sa Pilipinas? Nalito yata ako.
Well, yun ang pagkaalam ko that we have to issue them some kind of a visa to be able to stay in the Philippines habang they're being processed.
Madam Chair?
Ibigay yung visa saan? Sa Kabul? Wala na tayong embassy sa Kabul, di ba? Pati US. You mean to say, upon arrival, may visang ibibigay ang Pilipinas?
Yeah, well, itanong natin kay Secretary Manalo kasi yun ang understanding na naririnig ko na sinabi
If
sa
I may
akin.
interject, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Jinggoy, sorry.
Yeah,
Mas
Madam
lalo
Chair,
yata akong nalito. Pasensya.
Hindi ba doble-doble ang pag-issue ng visa? Mag-i-issue tayo ng visa dito sa Pilipinas, tapos mag-i-issue ng visa sa Amerika. Bakit din na diretso sa Amerika? Bakit kailangan pa dito? Minto.
Well,
Masyal ka muna. Teka. Secretary Manalo, please. Mag-i-issue upon arrival ng visa sa Pilipinas.
Ma'am,
Pero sabi ni Ambassador Babes pagkatapos nating screen, mabibigyan natin ng visa. Upon arrival, nakapag-screen na ba tayo o umaasa lang tayo sa sinasabi ng mga Amerikano na mga okay itong mga taon to? Secretary Manalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what Ambassador Romualdez meant to say is that we have to issue a visa before they arrive in the Philippines. So bibigyan sila ng
So,
99.
saan nila makukuha yung
Well,
visang yan? Dadaan muna sila sa Islamabad?
Normally, it would
Yun
have
ang
to be,
coverage
it would have to be through Islamabad. Islamabad PE would issue the 9A visa para maka-enter sila.
Napakagulo naman, ang dami naman nilang papasyalan. So, iikot muna, galing Kabul, pupuntang Islamabad. Mag-a-apply sa iilang Pilipino sa embassy ron. 50,000 sila, katapat nila 3 Pilipino. Ganun ba yon?
Normally, ganun. That's what we would do now.
Tapos, sa Islamabad, pumayag na ba yung Pakistan dito sa scheme na to?
Hindi, kinukonsult pa namin ang Islamabad.
Hindi pa alam ng Pakistan. Magugulat na lang sila, dadagsa yung mga kung sino-sino ron. Okay. Tapos, liliko na ngayon yung eroplano. Pupunta babalik sa Pinas. Ganun ba yon? Biglang landing sa Clark. Po. Electronic appearance at the counter in Islamabad. Anong level ng screening kung pindot-pindot lang? Tess.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. Before this Afghans, which are fully vetted, with assumption,
Fully vetted,
vetted by the
by the
Americans.
chief of mission
Okay,
of the U.S.
the US.
Embassy
It is still the
and
obligation.
not the Filipinos. We've never met them
No,
before.
not yet. It is
Okay.
still the Philippine obligation. It is the obligation of the Philippines to give to process them because they are Category A restricted nationals. All restricted nationals, there are other countries that are classified as such. We do a face-to-face interview, and before that, documents that we request from.
All of this is going to happen before they come to the Philippines?
That should be the case, Madam.
That should be the case. This is your and my understanding
Yes,
of what normally
yes.
occurs, right?
But you said it correctly that there is the capacity of Islamabad PE is Philippine Embassy in Islamabad is a little bit of a challenge, and at the same time, Madam Chair, it is in the concept paper of the Americans, they prefer that these Afghans will fly directly from Kabul to
Yun
Manila.
nga, di ba diretso
So-
Kabul dito sa New
Yeah.
Clark, pupunta sa The Crib sa New Clark City, di ba?
So, yeah.
Yun ang sinasabing plano. Wala namang binanggit na Islamabad. Higit na
Wala nga.
walang visa
Wala.
ang pinagsasabi. At sigurado ako si Ambassador Cervantes at ang buong Pakistan government walang alam tungkol dito. Secretary Manalo, please.
Yes, ma'am. Kung ngayon, if we agreed, halimbawa, just example, and we didn't do any change in our visa procedure, talagang dadaan sa Islamabad, PE. But in the event na we are now open to this idea, we may have to find additional or different kinds of processing, like maybe through electronic, etc., para lang ma-accommodate yung number. But wala pa tayo dun. I'm just saying na, but if it were held today and we agreed today, ganyan, they would have to go through Islamabad.
Dahil kasi, nagtataka ako, in the United States, they very clearly have their Afghan Allies Protection Act of 2009. The legal infrastructure is very clear-cut. It was amended twice, most recently in 2021. Kayang-kaya nila ayusin yung sa kanila. Kayang-kaya nila kunin yung mga dati nilang empleyado at sa tingin ko, talagang responsibilidad nila. If they're not willing to accommodate their own employees, nor to amend, once again, they've amended twice before, the Afghan Aliens Act, why should we be the ones to bend our immigration rules, overburden our staff in Islamabad as well as New Clark City, and impose all sorts of obligations on our neighbors? Di ko naintindihan eh. Yes, Secretary Manalo, Ambassador Babes, does this seem reasonable?
Ma'am, I think we will take into account your views when we consider this further. Okay.
We do not in any way attempt to influence or curtail the president's almost absolute power in forging foreign policy. However, by the rubric of simple reasonableness, this appears to be outlandish given the bending of rules required, the imposition on our already over burdened resources, given our security status, which the Muslim Filipinos themselves declare is precarious at present. Once again, exactly how long do we think the special immigrant visa will take to be granted? 9 months is what is stated under the Afghan Allies Protection Act of the United States. 9 months ang nasa batas nila, 1 to 2 weeks ang sinabi sa concept note. Tama ba, Secretary Manalo? How far along are these Afghan nationals with their SIV applications. Alam ko, di ba, magpapakita sila ng HR, recommendation ng superior, qualifications. How far along are they? Kasi ang balita, nung dinaan sila sa Qatar at UAE, meron na silang SIV, pre-approved sila. Etong pupunta sa Pilipinas, hindi sila pre-approved. Ibang-iba ang sitwasyon sa UAE at saka sa Qatar. Doon may SIV na sila. Eto, wala pang SIV. Tapos nagrereklamo nga mismo yung mga American lawyers na ketagal-tagal daw sa Afghan request. Nagpe-pending daw ng higit na 4 na taon. So how far along are these guys in their special immigrant applications? Maybe Ambassador Babes was given an indication kung sana pareho lang ng Qatar at UAE, hindi nakaka-nervyos yan. Pwede na rin. Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, what the U.S. has told us is that these applicants are in the last stages of completing the process. So presumably that will fall within our 30 to 59-day requirement for stay. We would have to make very clear that that's the case, but that's what they have
Sir,
intimated to us, that since they're in the last stage.
the grant of a visa is like pregnancy. It's either you are or you aren't. I mean, I don't know about the last stages. There simply is no last stage.
But, presumably, we would have to make very clear that whatever process, it has to fall within the 30 to 59-day period we allow for restricted nationals. And would have to be completed, and they would have to proceed to the United States.
Levity
If we
aside,
agree.
sir, the problem really is, Secretary, that so many time frames are being given. 1 to 2 weeks ang processing daw. Ayon sa kanilang batas, 9 months maximum daw. Ayon naman sa experience ng mga Afghan na nag-a-apply sa Amerika, kabalikat ng kanilang mga abogado, umaabot daw ng 4 years. So gaano katagal yan sa Pilipinas? 4 years maninirahan dito?
Ma'am,
Yes, but which timeline should we believe? Apakadami eh. Asa 1 to 2 weeks, 30 to 59 days, tapos andon 9 months to 4 years. Alin po?
Ma'am, I think responding to the question based on their concept note that after a trial of a few, they do not process, we can discontinue it on our option.
That's right. That's
And
right.
it is also, it also cuts against what they want to do if they will not process those notionally in here quickly because they can't process others because we will limit the number if we agree notionally. So that is the default, but we understand, and I personally am aware of the backlogs of the Homeland Security in the United States. So who can predict what will happen? It's anybody's guess.
That's correct. Like I said, I have personal experience with the humanitarian parole, and it grants you no status at all for years upon years. Secretary Manalo. Ay. Secretary Manalo,
Sorry.
please.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm just going to quote now from the concept paper, which the U.S. And on that particular case, it says that the processing for these visa cases, so those applicants, would take 30 to 60 days, after which the U.S. government would transport these Afghan nationals to the United States for permanent resettlement, or, if found ineligible, to another country. So I'm just quoting from the concept now. So this would fall, I mean, assuming we agree to this.
So
this-
wala yung 1 to 2 weeks?
Wala.
Kasi yun na na-quote kay Ambassador Romualdez yata or some other DFA official.
It could take, maybe in some cases, earlier than 30 days. But I think what the U.S. means here is tops. It won't exceed 60 days.
Okay, on the magical 60th day, what will occur? Wala pa yung SIV.
Well, the U.S. Would be obligated, as we see it here, to transport these nationals, if ineligible, for example, hindi nakaabot sa 60 days, to another country outside the Philippines, not the Philippines. They wouldn't stay in the Philippines.
If the application is disapproved, the applicants are then considered refugees, and the principle of non-refoulement becomes applicable. We can no longer send them back to Afghanistan. What's plan B?
Thank you, ma'am. That's a point that we have asked the DOJ for an opinion or clarification.
The obverse could also occur if the Philippine government classifies the applicants as not having refugee status, repatriates them to Afghanistan, where their visa applications are not approved. The Philippines will be in breach of its obligations under 1951 Convention, 57 Protocol, and something happens, unfortunately, to these applicants. It later turns out the government misqualified their status, and they were, in fact, refugees. We've seen many, many movies about this. This has happened too many times. What happens to the Philippine status then? What happens to our reputational risk, as it were? Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, that is a point that we've also been
Parang labis-labis na papogi to. Baka madali tayo ng hindi oras.
Yeah, we have also, in a similar vein, looked at the issue you have raised. And in fact, we've again also posed that question to DOJ and get their opinion kung ano kaya yung implication kung mangyari yan. But yes, that's also an issue that we are also contending with, the point you raised.
Okay, does DOJ have the courage to answer? Because I'm not sure.
Your Honors, we concur having received the request for legal opinion coming from the DFA, and we are in the process of finalizing our legal opinion. May we just clarify that we agree with the statements made that these Afghan nationals are not refugees because there is a process involved in being recognized as a refugee under the 1951 Convention, the 1957 Protocol, Your Honors.
Yes, thank you. And okay, just points of information. To your best knowledge, Ambassador Babes, Romualdez, Secretary Manalo, considering that the U.S. Embassy in Kabul is no longer operational, who's the chief of mission who will be approving, vetting, and sending over their Afghan employees?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, that's an issue we were going to ask the U.S. If we ever got to talk to them again on who is this COM, since there's no more embassy in Kabul.
But their concept paper mentioned a COM.
But
So surely they know who the guy is
That's why
and
we-
where he stays.
That's why we would ask. Most likely it will be someone in Washington, but we just have to confirm.
Ang magve-vet yung Washington,
I-
i-vet niya yung nasa Afghanistan.
I'm just guessing, but
Parang ang gulo, no? It can't be a chief of mission in Washington. It's a mission somewhere.
are you sure?
Yes, indicated it.
Hindi, chief of mission na sakop ang Afghanistan dahil
Yes,
nagsara
yes,
yung
yung-
Kabul.
yung
Hindi
may-
Washington yan.
Yung may Afghan desk sa State Department who holds.
Babalik sa State Department, Washington?
No, she will just oversee. Apparently, the one in charge of the Afghan.
Mas magulo naman yata yan sa atin.
Well,
Guaranteed delay yan, State Department.
depende natin.
Babalik sa swamp.
We will raise that with them if we see them.
Walang malapit-lapit na chief of mission? Paano yung chief of mission dito sa Pinas, sa Manila?
Si Ambassador dito.
Hindi, kasi nagtatanong ako,
Ah.
dahil, paano naman yung ambassador natin? Si Ambassador Cervantes sa Islamabad, sinong kadil niya? Hindi natin alam kung sino yung counterpart niyang kano. Hindi, nalilito kasi ako kung sino, di ba, kasi critical dito yung vetting, di ba? Alam na natin yun, yung vetting, di ba? It's going to be so clear. Ang sinasabi natin, walang kakayahan ng Pilipinas mag-vet ng mga Afghan nationals na hindi natin kaano-ano, hindi natin kakilala, hindi natin alam kung saan nanggaling. Pero kaya ng mga Amerikano. Umaasa lamang tayo sa Amerikano. Pero yung mga Amerikano, wala namang opisina doon sa Kabul para kalkalin lahat ng records nila na malamang nawala na rin. Ang aasahan natin yung Washington pa rin. Ganun ba yun? Since we're only going to be taking the words of the Americans for granted, we'll take the word of the Americans for the ironclad vetting procedure. Which Americans are we talking to sana dito, no? Since we have no capacity nga to conduct our own screening and background. Yes, Secretary Manalo.
Madam Chair, as you said, and I think the points you have made are very relevant. Kaya we are really, the next step really would be to put together all of our information and really have due diligence among our security agencies, just to be sure that these points are considered if we decide to talk with the U.S. And then the issue of the COM, in fact, that was one point that I raised in our internal discussions. Who exactly is the COM? And in fact, we will have to be clarified this with the U.S. And I think the points you've raised are also relevant. That perhaps if it's in Washington, there might be a problem because of distance. I don't know, but we could certainly raise that point. But they have not yet in their concept paper identified who this would be, who this
Pero
is.
kapag chief of mission, di ba? Siyempre nasa abroad yun. Hindi naman Washington yun. They're referring us to some office somewhere. Okay. So, okay, just to round up the loose ends here. Since the Afghan nationals previously worked for the United States government, some of them will be targets of reprisal by anti-US terrorist groups. How do we intend to protect them? We don't want to keep them prisoner. We don't want to confine them to a restricted space and deprive them of freedom of mobility. At the same time, we're fully aware that they could be targets. How do we protect them? Perhaps we can ask the AFP, the PNP, what will be the cost of such protection?
Ma'am, for the part of the PNP, as mandated by law, we are to provide the necessary security assistance and for those who are here in our country or sojourning this country. And for that matter, we have prepared some briefing presentation if Madam Chair will let us permit us to have it shown in.
That's okay. I'm just happy to hear that you have something prepared, and please submit them. We'll peruse them at the right time, given the status of the situation. How much will it cost to provide all this extra protection? Already, the city of Marawi is crying for additional armed forces assistance.
Madam Chair, until this time, we have no cost of the security arrangement that we have planned because of the number of those Afghan nationals who will be coming over.
Yes,
Thank you.
the exploding cost of living is no secret to anyone, and more of our countrymen are experiencing hunger. Repeatedly, it has been said that the U.S. will absorb all costs. While some of these are easily determinable, the reality is that other costs will not be readily apparent from the outset. And the personnel, for example, that you will have to assign for protection, and the DepEd that will have to take care of the children and siblings involved, they will no longer be able to perform their regular functions for our citizens or for the agencies. Will there be compensation for this government, for the government employees, and even private citizens who will be similarly burdened? Ambassador Romualdez, you've been adamant that the Americans will pay for everything.
That is the understanding I have, Madam Chair, because they told us that when we have a formal discussion on all of these matters that we want to take up, they will, of course, look at it and see whether it is in fact really viable for them to be able to, if we present them a cost that this is what it will cost us, and you said that you will take care of everything, this is what we have. So on that basis, we can actually either say yes or no. They just would like to know from us whether we are prepared to sit down and discuss all the issues that were pointed out earlier and also by you, Madam Chair. And I think that by then we will know exactly what the real score is. If this is going to be everything taken care of by the United States, or the other things that we have other concerns, like for instance, you said about the visas and all that. That also entails cost, obviously, or at least personnel that we will have to assign.
Yes, thank you very much. The worry, of course, if this becomes a lingering problem, we have no set timelines. And 4 years would be a very long time. That's the entire high school period. I doubt if DepEd will be able to undertake all that. In any case, just to round things up, what is the status finally of the U.S. request? At which point are we? Is the approval still under negotiations? Has it been recommended for approval by the president? And is the executive branch merely fine-tuning the details, given that apparently there have been several interagency meetings already last year? A meeting, I believe, in April, thereafter June 2, and then June 7, the latest. What, therefore, is the status of the U.S. request for the Afghan nationals to come to the Philippines? Yes, Secretary Manalo, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, first, we have not entered into any negotiation with the United States on this issue. It's only been through informal contact. In fact,
This is not considered a negotiation, even if a formal concept note was actually provided and the State Department followed up.
not considered, at least as we know it, because it's just an idea of the U.S. and we just we have within the Philippines gone over it and given our ideas to each other.
Secretary Manalo, I think Ambassador Romualdez has given interviews indicating that it was subject of negotiation because we are considering the request. And I'd like to call on Yusek Poa, who also appears to have a different understanding of the same.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, basically, because this has been a subject of consultation with the national government agencies, DepEd being one of
Yes,
them.
that's correct. There are already, as far as this hearing is concerned, 3 meetings of record involving many, many agencies.
Yes, ma'am. Although on the part of DepEd, we were only able to attend one, which was last June 7, wherein we also registered, and we also want to register now and state for the record our vehement objection and opposition to the proposal in its entirety. This has been formalized through, again, as I've said, through our comments submitted to the Anti-Terrorism Council, mainly on legal grounds and on security issues. If I may just quickly summarize.
Yes,
on the
please
legal
do so.
grounds, the department, of course, under the stewardship of the Vice President, Secretary of Education, feels that this will delve into an issue of sovereignty. As we all know, so in sovereignty, the exercise of rights and functions of a state must be exclusive from intervention from other states or interference. And in this case, this will include the right to determine who can enter the country and who can stay in the Philippines, whether temporarily or permanently. But in the proposal, at least in the notes that were given to us for comment, it seems that the vetting process will be done by the United States of America. And therefore, this is an interference into our exclusive determination as to who can enter our country. And secondly, of course, as I've mentioned during the June 7 meeting, based on the information given to us, the only reason why the U.S. will not be processing these Afghans in U.S. territories is because some internal rule, law, regulation prohibits them from doing so. And if we may echo what the statement of the chairperson, why would the US expect us to bend our rules if they are not willing to be flexible in theirs? And that is really a concern of the Department of Education under the Vice President. And of course, aside from that, it's really the security concern. As you know, the schools have been witness to armed conflicts locally. The local terrorist groups is really a concern of the department. And with the presence of Afghans here, if the NSC is saying, or NICA is saying that there's low risk in terms of infiltration, we do worry about them being targets because, again, we feel that this might have the risk of further exacerbating an already unstable situation as regards local terrorist groups in some areas in the country. With that, ma'am, I guess we just have to summarize and again state on record our vehement opposition and objection to the proposal in its entirety. And we have again submitted our comments signed by the Vice President to the Secretariat for your perusal.
Thank you very much, Yusek. During the meeting, you were informed that the DepEd would have to educate the families of these Afghan employees of the United States government.
No, ma'am, we did not get to that point.
Why then were you invited?
I think we were invited because DepEd was simply asked to comment by the ATC, the
Not because you were going to
Council.
be directly involved.
We haven't gotten to that point. However, during the meeting, we already registered our objection on the proposal. So we didn't really get to the point of where
principle.
DepEd would be participating. Yes.
Yes, without commenting on your direct participation, together curiously with the DOTR and DOST. I was a little bit perplexed by the assemblage.
That is correct, madam.
Thank you very much, Yusek. Anyone else would like to add to the discussion? Since I have no further questions, Commissioner Tansinko, I simply wanted, by way of information, to clarify the chart that you provided, indicating that, in fact, since the declaration, once again, of the Philippines that we were open to Afghan refugees, particularly following the heart-rending videos we all watched upon the departure of the Americans from Kabul, there appears to be a total of 137 Afghan nationals who have arrived in the Philippines from 2021 to 2023. Is that correct? I refer to the chart submitted by our office herewith.
Yes, ma'am. It is correct, ma'am, that the 137 arrivals from August 1, 2021 to June 14, 2023 comprises all visa categories, not only refugees. It includes the Section 13A, married to a Filipina, then 47A2, 47B, 9A category, seaman.
Yes, but in your listing, I refer to refugees because that seems to be the relevant category. That's 47B, refugees. In 2022, you recorded 4, but in your final tally, only 1. Which is the correct number?
The final tally, ma'am, is 4 in 47B.
Okay, so we have 4 Afghan refugees already in the Philippines.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, are you aware of their whereabouts? Are they working? Are they married? And do they have families in the Philippines?
Yes, ma'am. They are still in the country.
Yes, so we'd like any information on them if you don't have it on hand, even for 47A2. Because that seems to be a large number, 42 Afghans under 47A2.
The 47A2, ma'am, on the 2021 year, the 31, this includes the 29 that arrived in September 8 of 2021, but they all departed on December 20 of the same year.
Okay. Okay, there's also a large number of DFA-issued diplomats. 28? Andito pa sila?
We have no data as of now, Madam Senator, but these are all issued by the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. Tinatanong ko lang kasi kung baka naman, kung 137, kahit papano, may community na ng Afghans dito, kaya karapat-dapat lamang na pumunta sila sa Pilipinas. Pero kung aapat lang at hindi pa natin alam kung nasan sila, palagay ko hindi community yon. Wala silang pag-uuwian, wala silang kamag-anak, wala silang kakilala. Yun lang ang tinatanong ko dahil nalilito ako kung bakit ang Pilipinas ang napili sa dinami-dami ng bansa. Samantalang alam natin, napakaraming Afghan sa ibang lugar sa Europa, napakadami sa Pakistan, karami-rami nila sa iba't ibang bahagi ng Asia. Yun lang. Anyone else who would like to add something, maybe from the AFP? Anything else that you'd like to share with the committee, please?
Good afternoon, ma'am. As far as the AP is concerned, ma'am, we are aligned with the statement of the Secretary of National Defense on this issue, ma'am. He already took into consideration our
Yes, sir, Colonel. Which statement of the Secretary?
everything, ma'am, and on the more specific level, ma'am, for us, for the AP, ma'am, we also join the manifestations of the NBI, ma'am, on the security level, ma'am. It would be more prudent to limit the movements and engagements of the applicants, if ever this will be granted, to the specific site, ma'am, for the protection of also of both parties, ma'am, the local population, also the applicants, ma'am. And also, ma'am, finally, ma'am,
So I take it to mean that the DepEd and USEC PUA are alone in their vehement objection.
also join their manifestation, ma'am. Also,
You can't join everyone, Colonel.
yes, ma'am.
Pick a side. Attorney Guro, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, we share the same position with DepEd in as much as we welcome the Afghans because they are our brothers and sisters in faith, but with the current discussions ongoing, we are not sure, not really on the protection of our citizen, but for their protection, which might affect also because one factor to be discussed here also, as pointed out by Secretary Teodoro, is the type of accommodations that we have. These are Muslims, so the religious and the cultural sensitivities of these people should be factored in also. So we join with the same position with DepEd. We vehemently oppose to in its entirety for allowing them to be housed here in the Philippines.
Higit sa lahat, Attorney Guro, hindi ba dapat unahin ang housing sa Marawi City kesa sa dito? Okay, sino pa? May dadagdag po? Anyone would like to add? Yes, Secretary.
Just a
Teodoro,
final
please.
recap, ma'am.
I know you're brand new and you weren't privy to the earlier discussions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, insofar as the department is concerned, this is now dependent on the legal opinion, depending on the legal opinion to be given and issued by the DOJ. If they say it's legally permissible, then,
As a bar top notcher, what is your legal opinion?
ma'am,
I won't nail you to this, the Secretary of Defense. It's just you and me, Gibo.
No, ma'am, there are ways that it can be legally permissible, but we have to anticipate the what ifs.
Right.
And then we have to bring on to the other side and be certain that they are ready, willing, and able to execute their undertakings. That we have to determine.
If you have sanctions and means
Madam Chair, perhaps then
to obligate the same?
And it's reputational risk once again.
Right.
I think that is the strongest sanction that one can give to bring out a case just
I
like you have
don't
so
know that
expertly
the
done.
Americans have been very good
But
at
you have been very good,
keeping
Madam Chair.
together their reputation when they withdraw from
No,
wars.
Madam Chair, and it still hasn't progressed to that, and we are
Oo.
very thankful for the opportunity for us and for me to be educated personally on the various issues on that have arisen in this hearing, and I'll moving forward, we will be really cognizant of this issue should the discussion, should the interagency position move forward.
Thank you very much. And perhaps the last word goes to my much older relative, Ambassador Romualdez, please.
Thank you very much, my younger relative. Anyway, well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for this. And I totally agree with Secretary Teodoro that whatever was brought out here these are concerns that obviously we have to really look into. But I just wanted to correct one point: is there's never been any real formal formal negotiations or discussions with the State Department. Has just been following up with us here in the embassy in Washington, D.C. And of course, they're always anxious whether it is a yes or a no. And the sooner we do that, obviously, the better it is, because that way, by the way, it will also take them perhaps about 4 to 9 months, I understand, to be able to make sure that whatever facility that they will be using is precisely what we're concerned about, which is secure, everything that is needed for the board and lodging of these Afghan nationals will be in place. So that's why they're asking, following it up with us, and it's up to us what we want to do with it, and whatever concerns we have, whatever we want to tell them, they're prepared to listen. And if it's something that's possible, they'll do it. If not, then they go to another country for this.
Salamat. Maraming salamat. The worry, of course, is that elections in the United States are ratcheting up, and politicians everywhere make dreadful mistakes, whether in Washington, D.C. or in the Philippines. So with that, we close this hearing. We certainly have not raised all the questions. We've raised some of the questions, but we've certainly raised the level of confusion. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.